This podcast is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle.
Hello, this is Nipun Soni, the CFO at Billion to One, and you are listening to CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 799.
What do you want this piece of data to say? How do you calculate it? It's almost every solution is not a technical solution or a finance solution. It's a business question. What should this metric really say? And then you say, okay, now where does that data come from? How do we access that data? And you have to challenge your teams to force it into a construct. And earlier on, we didn't have the funding or the budget to go build a multi-million-dollar, out of the box stand up. We didn't have the talent for that as well. And it took us a while to really get into this cadence, but it began with the master data management.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Adam Ante, CFO of Paycor. When Adam Ante first arrived at Paycor in 2017, the seasoned finance executive was tasked with prodding company management to begin monitoring performance metrics daily. However, in order for Paycor management to step up its intake of daily metrics, Paycor needed to adopt a new data management strategy, a framework that Ante says began with clarifying what exactly the company needed to know, and then identifying the metrics that would tell it like it was. From there, Ante says the question became, okay, now where does that data come from? And how do we access that data? CFO Adam Ante takes us on Paycor's data journey, a journey undeterred by COVID and one energized by the company's 2021 IPO. We begin after this. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility, because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. Over 28,000 businesses already use NetSuite. For the new year, NetSuite has a new financing program for those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/CFOpod. Head to netsuite.com/CFOpod for this special one-of-a-kind financing offer on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. netsuite.com/CFOpod. Hello, we're speaking with Adam Ante, CFO of Paycor. Adam, welcome.
Jack, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So, Adam, we're going to begin by asking you to look back for us. And we're looking for you to share some of those experiences that you felt really shaped you into a leader, had an impact, made an impression on you along the way. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, absolutely. These are the fun times of my career where everything was brand new and they were fun. I guess as I think about the three key areas for me, the first one, I was about 4 or 5 years into my finance career, and I was with a company called Fifth Third Bank based out of Cincinnati, and went to the University of Cincinnati. So excited to get a finance job here in Cincinnati, Fifth Third Bank. And I sort of lucked into this key division, which would later become a public company called Vantiv. And they were all about merchant services and bank credit card processing, and bounced around and did a handful of different experiences. But right after the IPO in 2012, I was sort of an analyst on the team working around and supporting the IPO. I got into a lot of really fun things like product development, supporting product development, supporting M&A, learning how to pitch deals and pitch projects, thinking about capital structure, got to raise a couple $1 billion of capital through the processes. And then I found myself running M&A the finance arm of M&A and working with the executive leadership across the company, and then working in modeling and learning modeling and working with bankers and deal making and how that comes together. And it was just such a broad scope of finance experiences that it really helped to shape and form like how I thought about finance and how I thought about our role as finance leaders and how we can drive the business, how we can support the business, and how we get to make decisions. So that was the first thing. It's just the foundation of getting to do a lot of really fun corporate finance work that supported the business and strategy through that transaction with Vantiv.
Can I ask you one just question regarding that? Is this part of your personality? I mean, were you accessible to people who would say, hey, let's get Adam involved in this? Were you aggressive and sort of volunteering, or, how did you, attach yourselves to so many of those interesting projects?
Yeah, I'd say that it became a combination of both things, both of those opportunities. And one of the things for me that's really important as a finance person or a finance analyst or a leader now is that I don't always think about finance first. It's really about the business objectives. So really trying to understand the business, understand the operations, figure out where we're trying to go. How does it support the strategy? What is the strategy? Those things are always the most important things. And the finance, ultimately the financial statements, are a long-term outcome of all those other decisions that you're making. And so if you can help the business make better decisions long-term and align their strategic objectives up with where the financials are going to go to support that, then everybody gets to make better decisions. And not everybody in finance necessarily bends that way. So I think one of the things that was really important for me, especially starting out, was learning, why am I doing these things? What are you asking me to do? Do you want me to do this? And I started to have a better understanding of the business and the implications and the objectives. And then I ended up sort of knowing more than most around the business and the operations and how things worked. And that enabled me to get involved in more and more things.
So it sounds like you're pretty much wired that way from day one.
It's funny, really early in my...
And you were a financial analyst. It wasn't like you were in the accounting department.
I have had some accounting focused roles where I have had to learn how to just do journal entries and figure out how things needed to come together for accounting. So I have had a handful of those roles. And actually, there was this one interesting time in my career. I remember it was the first year that I was working. I was actually a customer service rep in a 401k, really large insurance company that offered 401k. So I worked directly with customers to implement their 401k and apply credits to their individual accounts. And we also had these agents that we used to work with. And these agents were selling our 401k services as well as other insurance benefits. And they were selling other people's insurance benefits. Well, I didn't understand this dynamic of these agents and these third-party brokers. But I figured everybody else did, and I was just way behind on the curve. So I went to my manager and I said, hey, can you help me understand how this agent relationship works? Because I don't understand it, and I'm working with this person. And to my surprise, she had no idea. She had been working for years, but she had never thought about that. Not that it was wrong for her to not think about it, but she pointed me to somebody else. And so really early on, I found out that I just needed to know more about why things work that way or how they work so that I could figure out, should we do it differently or can we do it differently? I've tended to bend that way even before I was in a finance role.
If you were, and I'll allow you to go down. I know I stopped you after the first experience, but it was such a broad one, and it was multifaceted, as you explained. Are you thinking of yourself as a possible CFO yet? In that chapter that you just described, were you aiming for the CFO office yet? Or it seems to me you could still have gone a number of different directions.
Yeah. Earlier in my career, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to go into like money management and going down the CFA route and potentially, go into that side of the business or the corporate side of the business and managing either the business longer term or becoming the CFO. And I think I found out pretty quickly that I really like making decisions around business and strategy. And so the idea of sort of either selling financial services to folks or managing mutual funds, while that could be exciting, managing the money is interesting and making decisions about companies. The idea of making decisions that the company is going to go execute on and then being there as the strategy plays out and you see the performance play out and you're a part of that build that started to become more and more compelling for me as I was going through graduate school. I started to sort of figure that out and realize it. So I started to lean more and more towards the corporate side, pretty quickly. And then it was one of the very first things I said. I remember talking to my boss who I worked with at Vantiv. Her name's Stephanie Ferris. She's now the president of FIS. She went on to run that company. And I said, she asked me what I wanted to do as an analyst. This is probably my first month on the job. And I said, I want to be the CFO. And she was like, well, not everybody says that. Not everybody wants to be that. And I said, what do you mean not everybody says that? I thought everybody that I worked with wanted to be the CFO. And I realized after that first couple months that not everybody did want the chance to be the CFO. And to be totally honest, I had no idea what that meant. I didn't really know what the CFO's role was, but I knew that it was sort of the pinnacle of the finance career. So that's what I started aiming for. And I did get into like corporate development and M&A. I really love it. I love the art of sort of bringing a deal together and closing business. It's a lot of fun. But I also made this decision to intentionally get out of running corporate development, because I knew that if I continued to do that too long, or I got into like the strategy side of I am the corporate development person, that longer term, I would have to be the corporate development person and could potentially limit me from being the CFO, which actually leads me to the second point of where it sort of prepared me in the journey to get to the CFO role, which was at the time I had been running M&A alongside the executive leader who was sort of running M&A strategy. I was the finance arm. I'd been running it for about 2.5 years at this point. And I started to have this feeling, hey, I need to get out of this at some point, learning a lot, but I need to go be in the business and make more business decisions and live in the operations. And so we acquired this company called Mercury Payments, which was an awesome company based on integrated payments, a lot of technology, really cool channel play. And it was based out of Durango, Colorado and Denver, Colorado. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth in that deal. And I said, this would be amazing. I could take this chance, jump out of M&A and go and be the line of business CFO. Because the CFO who was there for that company, he was going to go on and be the CFO of another company. He didn't want to live in the integration world. So I thought it would be a great, great chance. I had a team. I immediately launched in. I got this FP&A team. There's a pricing team that I was working with. And I knew the business partners that were going to go run the business. And so I envisioned myself, hey, I could grow into this. Again, I could be this line of business CFO. It was $200 million of revenue. So it was really going to be an awesome opportunity. And I failed. I didn't know exactly what that meant. Coming out of strategy and corporate development to the day-to-day of running a company was totally different. And I didn't have enough context. And so they ended up hiring a line of business CFO who was a former CFO. And she came in and she was a really great mentor. So it was a great experience for me to figure out sort of where my gaps were, what were some of the things that I needed to work on, failing and, not taking it so personally, although it was really tough. And then taking that, the next year effectively to learn more about how do I run this business? How do I build relationships with the executive team? How do I stay tied into the strategy and make sure that my team is supporting them in the one-on-one stuff as well that I hadn't necessarily managed on a day-to-day basis before. So that was another really key experience for me, was really failing at becoming the line of business CFO, which I think helped me to, really reflect.
Excellent insight there for so many who just want to thrive on their success and not have any moments where they have to slow down and reassess. Was that a mentor? I mean, had you had mentors prior to that? I think you described her sort of as a mentor. But prior to that, had you worked as closely or had the opportunity to really work with a CFO before?
Through my M&A role, I really had worked with a couple of CFOs, and I worked really closely with Stephanie Ferris, again, who became the president of FIS. And I worked with the current CFO at the time, Mark Heimbach, who went on to run that organization, FIS, before leaving a couple years ago. And then working with my direct leader, her name is Joy Winery. She actually went on to become the CFO. She's now the CFO in a similar sort of industry company as I am, and we stay connected. So I hadn't had a lot of mentors earlier in my career. I definitely did not grow up with any sort of family knowledge or, backing or support to understand what finance meant or how to run a business. So I didn't really grow up with that experience. And coming through earlier in my career, looking for those opportunities was something that I just knew I had to do because people kept saying, hey, you need to find mentors, you need to find mentors. And so I tried to find these opportunities to key into people that were successful. And I wanted to mimic my career after. And Stephanie Ferris, again, I think that's the third time that I've mentioned her name already, but she was a really important sort of professional development person for me as I think about growing my career with Vantive.
And you named quite a few others. I mean, you're as you advanced your CFO network, your network of CFOs grew, allowing you, I would imagine, from time to time to get reality checks from them, perhaps, and have them share their thinking with you as you try to imagine yourself in the role. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, that's great. The third big experience that really helped me to figure out how to be a CFO was really the COVID pandemic and what it did to our business and the role that I needed to play in supporting the organization. And I had become the CFO in the fall of 2019. I formally became the CFO of Paycor. And it was the first big sort of step into this, executive level C-suite role. And then a couple months later, all of this stuff started to happen with COVID, and the trajectory of the business changed, and the amount of planning that we needed to do, and how we needed to manage the organization and do it professionally while also managing our investors was really, really difficult. And it was a lot of work, as you can imagine, lots of late nights and long weekends. But it really helped me to build my relationships with the executive team that I was brand new with. And a lot of the worry, of course, was, hey, this thing's going to take forever. COVID's going to last forever. Business is going to be compressed and hampered and hamstrung. And you have to plan for this to last forever. Right. And then of course my initial worry is, oh my gosh, I don't want the company to fail. And that would be the worst sort of first couple steps into being a CFO, is to have the company fail. And so we had to take, really intentional measures to manage the business while not hurting the business so that we could continue to grow. And it was a great way. I got in deep on a lot of different areas that I hadn't managed before, and then worked really broadly with the executive team to build those relationships so that we can all execute, really well.
Nice overview for us. And you did bring us up to Paycor, really. We might have a few more career-related questions for you during our mentoring round, but right now, why don't we find out a little more about Paycor? Some of us might be familiar with the company, but others not. Can you just perhaps tell us about this company? What does it do today, and what are its offerings?
Yeah, absolutely. So Paycor is an HCM software company focused in the SMB market. We sort of frame up our market size based on the size of the company of about 10 to 1,000 employees. And we've really built, a world-class HCM and payroll software that's designed for leaders within the organizations. And we've configured it to work for key verticals within the market. So manufacturing, healthcare, professional services, food and beverage. But we are a horizontal platform as well. So we do have clients across all markets. And one of the interesting things and sort of key items for us is that we've developed really deep integration capabilities that enable us to partner with third parties and additional pieces of software so that we can create a more holistic software experience for these SMBs. And we really go deep and differentiate our product offering around talent management as well. So helping leaders manage their organization, manage objectives within their business, being able to manage talent and keep talent and access talent is clearly a critical right now in the market, and it's one of our key focuses.
In the HCM space, some of the technology offerings often began with sort of payroll, and they've expanded into these other areas, such as more of the talent management, sophisticated type of things. Am I right about that? Is that how this company grew, or is it different?
Yeah, that's exactly how it began. In 1990, the company was formed really around payroll. So the CEO at the time had left ADP, and decided that he could make a better payroll solution focused on customer service with the same sort of software capabilities. And it really wasn't software at the time. It was all manually done. And then over the next 20 years, it took a while to evolve, but over the next 20 years, the company really began to add more services as HCM expanded. It was really heavy on payroll. Then it expanded into HR solutions, and then it expanded into time-related solutions. And since then, over the last 10 years, the HCM market continues to grow at an outsized rate as we add things like talent into that suite, and organizational management capabilities, benefits administration, as well as a litany of other services that continue on the fringes to continue to come in to the HCM market. So growing well, it was one of the things that excited me about coming to Paycor was the market and the industry and its trajectory and the other players in competition. So it continues to expand.
So I would imagine, just given the age that it goes back all the way back that many years, that this is one of those technology companies that within the last 10 years has been making that migration from on-premise to SaaS. And the finance function is got the burden of, navigating both sort of the financials and sort of as one becomes more SaaS oriented. Where are you on that journey?
Yeah. So in the late, I guess around 2008, 2009, the founder actually made the decision to completely rewrite the platform and put it into the cloud. And this was a really great move. It, of course, pinched them on their revenue growth at the time, but it enabled an immense amount of scalability after that. So we are 100% SaaS in the cloud, a multi-tenant platform.
Customers, you have no longer on-premise customers? Or
we do not have any on-premise customers.
Really? No. When was that complete? Did that take place from 2008 to 4 years into the future? I got to believe your customers, some of them were, wanting to stay with what they had.
Yeah, it did take a couple of years for sure. And like I mentioned, it did hamstring some of the revenue growth because you had customers who weren't interested in that SaaS solution. And it's a little bit more complicated for them to even conceptualize what it means to do their payroll in the cloud versus an on-prem solution that's loaded into their their own core solution. And so, yeah, it took some time. It was definitely difficult. And really, in hindsight, you'd say, wow, what an amazing decision, especially for a founder who had been in the business for almost 20 years at this point, to make this really next 20-year investment and rewrite the platform, knowing that he didn't want to necessarily work there for the next 20 years. It's really an impressive decision. And the company did, incredibly well benefited from that migration.
So then it's all the unit economics, renewable revenues, and lifetime customer value. What other top of mind metrics are you keeping a close eye on?
Yeah, as you can imagine, there's sort of unlimited metrics to pull together, and so we do have access. We spent a lot of time actually earlier on when I joined the company, investing in our data infrastructure. How do we manage first financial data most effectively, and then operational data, and now into customer data? We're really focusing in getting into the customer data to see if we can pull additional insights out of that. And that data office has been critical for us to be able to, especially go through the IPO, but to manage the business and to continue to execute, day in and day out. And one of the things that we had done really with the beginning of COVID, with the onset of COVID, is we really flipped the company to drive urgency as well to daily metric monitoring. And it's not always beneficial to look constantly at daily metrics as you think about long-term trajectory of the company. But in this case, it really helped us to understand what is happening inside of our portfolio to our customers every single day so that we could try to respond and react as quickly as we possibly could. And this has evolved a little bit, from the financial portfolio side and understanding potential impacts to cash flow to even more operational understanding and customer service, customer experience, our ability to implement our software and get business stood up quickly. So we still continue to look at those metrics on a daily basis.
Can I say, when you say daily, you would look at those metrics daily. How did you raise the profile of them or make sure they were getting in everybody's face daily? Is that a simple, just a dashboard elements that you incorporated or something to that effect?
We really started by compiling them into Excel and publishing them daily. We didn't have the infrastructure stood up immediately. And so at first it was just about building the relationship with the executive team so that they understood what was going on and how critical it was that we understood on a daily basis. And then for myself and for Raul, our CEO, it was constantly looking at those metrics and, not abdicating that responsibility to somebody else looking at these metrics, even if it's in Excel, getting into it, unpacking it, asking questions, further refining how we're measuring things. Because the first time that you kick out a metric, everybody's like, oh, what is this? Does this make sense? Is this the way that it works? And then you'll get better and better and better over time. So we really started with, we need to get there fast. Let's get it out the door, publish it by this afternoon. And then let's start refining it over time. And it's since evolved into more of a Power BI dashboard capability. We have things in Teams, we have things online. You log into it from your mobile application, but it started with an Excel document and a PDF and email.
I want to ask you something here now. You arrive in 2017, and it's roughly 2 years later, you're CFO. You arrived in a sort of a VP of finance role, and just within 2 years, you become CFO. But I just want to share that because I'm curious, as you just suggested, the data challenge that your company faces and every company faces, there's so much of it. When you arrive, where were they on the sort of the data governance journey? Because I have so many CFOs who might tell us, "Oh, we're cleaning up the data," and again, I just see these like giant pools of data all around the company, what they're trying to say is it's useless to them unless they can really sort of add context to it and make sure the data's got it's quality data or what have you. All of what needs to get done there. Did any of that need to get done? Back in 2017, were you just beginning to put sort of a data governance, or was it already there? Was there a framework? Was it already there?
Yeah, there was really no framework for it. It didn't really exist at all when I joined. And when I joined, I actually came over as like a VP of analytics for whatever that meant. I didn't exactly know what it meant, but I knew that the opportunity was cool and it sounded like we had to build a lot of things. And when I got into it, what I realized is that there was like a SQL server that had some data on it, and it was called like .accounting temp or something like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is where all the data in the company is sitting in this temp SQL database. And it was really administered by a key team, a key finance systems team that really built the company up over the last 10 years. But getting to the next level, we were going to need the next level of infrastructure. And so every turn, as you could imagine, just meant somebody had to go in and figure out how to write SQL queries to pull data together or to write against that database. And there's significant amount of data in a technology company, right? We should have access to massive amounts of data. But the most important thing is an ability to bring it together into a place where people can access it and measure it and put the right level of governance around it. None of that really existed. So we were really struggling to manage the business operationally. We didn't know where all the data was. We didn't know what it meant when somebody would pull something together. And I think a lot of folks find this is that, you'll ask this person for some data and they send it to you. And then you say, oh, I don't like that. That doesn't make sense. So you ask somebody else and they'll send you something and it's supposed to say the same thing. And you want the data to be the same thing, but it's not. And people are pulling things differently. And that's the environment that I walked into in 2017.
So where do you begin? Do you get a third party to help sort it out? Do you just try to put down, begin to construct a framework, how to separate the data, how to qualify it?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you have to do is come together on the master data management side. What do you want this piece of data to say? How do you calculate it? It's almost every solution is not a technical solution or a finance solution or a question. It's a business question. What should this metric really say? And then you say, okay, now where does that data come from? How do we access that data? And you have to challenge your teams to force it into a construct. And earlier on, we didn't have the funding or the budget to go build a multi-million-dollar, out of the box stand up. We didn't have the talent for that as well. And it took us a while to really get into this cadence, but it began with the master data management. This is a booking. What does a booking mean? How do we quantify it? Where are we going to put the data so that people have access to it? And then how are we going to get other people to stop, reporting on the Salesforce report and use our data, use our reporting? And that takes a long time. It's a cultural shift. And by the way, you're running at 1,000 other things, and sometimes it's hard to affect that faster than others. We've made a lot of progress since then, but that's as we sort of continue to grow for sure.
Well, thank you for answering a few more questions there. It's just an area that I think many finance leaders are struggling with. So it's always interesting to hear how one organization views it or their point of view on it. So thank you. Do want to touch on, and again, a lot's going on in the talent realm. We've found that COVID really has drawn the attention of finance leaders to talent for a number of reasons. And now we're experiencing some inflation. So salary-wise, finance leaders are revisiting compensation, looking for solutions as they look to hold on to some of their best employees. When it comes to talent, what would you tell us as far as your mindset, what conclusions you've come to as to the role of finance in the talent equation in your company?
Yeah, I've always seen I've always wanted to create, and I've always wanted to have and be part of a team that I sort of affectionately call a Black Ops team. I want our team to be more of a Black Ops team. We can deploy anywhere, we can do anything, we can drive the organization, and we are setting the pace for how the company needs to perform. And I think people do get a little, I should say, folks in finance and accounting tend to recoil a little bit when we say, hey, we as finance leaders own the outcome of this thing, whether that's new sales or channel development or improved retention or operational effectiveness. They tend to put their hand up because it's not as easy to say I own those things. But I've tried to build a team. I've tried to bring people in that think like that want to own the outcomes and not just be a reporting function. Other people can report, and reporting is the easy part, but figuring out how we can partner with folks, that we're making the right decision alongside the business leaders, and that the outcome of those decisions are not for the business, they're for all of us to own. And that's the culture that I've tried to create. That's the culture that my leaders create. And we bring folks in with that expectation. One of the things that we do is we've built culture statements for our finance teams. And it's sort of a series of 8 sort of statements that really speak more to how we do our work rather than just, generic things about our values, but more how do we want to show up every day? What are the things that you need to do as an analyst or an accountant or a business intelligence leader so that when you show up in these projects, we're not just reading out things, we're not just doing what people tell us, but that we're challenging the business, we're challenging the pace, and we're setting or we're taking ownership of these results as an organization together.
Wondering whether COVID and the remote model and whether your policies have shifted, have you adopted as you dealt with that? Do you have more remote workers today? Are you hiring people not necessarily to work out of the corporate offices, but elsewhere? What would you tell us?
Yeah, we made this terrible decision right before COVID to expand all of our facilities footprint. And so we entered all these long-term leases, and then COVID hit and we were like, oh man, that was a bad decision. I think it was my decision too. So it was totally my fault. But then, right after COVID, we made this decision as an organization to become virtual first. We had to enable all of our service organization, all of our implementation organization, and these key functions in our business. We had to enable them to be able to go home. And once we got into it, we were like, okay, we're not going to do the back and forth where we're going to say we're coming in, maybe we're coming in, and then we're going to drag it through, months and months and months. We just said, we're going to be virtual first. So let's put all of our energy into understanding how to work together virtually rather than waiting until we come back into the office. And we've done a lot of fantastic things, including taking the company public last year while we've been virtual. And the organization has scaled massively, and we're growing, 20%. So we've seen a lot of success, and we continue to be virtual first. We do have a headquarters in Cincinnati. It's a beautiful building, and we have a lot of space there. We don't have a ton of people that come in. People are welcome to. So we do have more sort of strategy sessions, and we'll have teams that come together that get to be in person, and they'll use that building. But right now we're looking at remaining virtual first. And we'll continue to operate like that as we've seen a lot of success. And we've been able to hire a lot of really great talent outside of just the Cincinnati area. It's enabled us to open up our talent search geographically all across the U.S.
So if you could go back to that 30 days before your IPO and tell yourself something, what would it be?
Well, at this point, I guess I would say, hey, it's going to work out. So don't stress as much as you're stressing. I'm not sure that I would have taken that advice or listened. Um, but yeah, that's ultimately what it would have been. It was a whirlwind for that, especially that last little bit, not having gone through it before. But I probably would have told myself hey, just get a couple of nights rest and relax a little bit.
You didn't focus on any one area, maybe overdone other areas you might have paid a little closer attention to. Nothing like that you can speculate for
Yeah.
us.
Well, I mean, by all accounts, and it's not just because of me. I mean, by all accounts, we had a massively successful IPO. We were one of the top 5 performing stocks who went public in 2021. As of a couple of weeks ago, one of the top 5 performing stocks. And, it really, for me, it began immediately when I started thinking, okay, we're going to go public. It begins with, we have to execute as a business. Forget the finance side or the infrastructure or the reporting. If you can't execute and operate the company, doesn't matter if you can be public, because you're not going to be public for long, or you'll never get there in the first place. So, focusing on operations and building around successful ability to execute is the number one focus. And then as I think about, okay, now I'm going to turn to the finance and the accounting side and what we need to do to become a public company. The number one thing was bring in a team that's an amazing leadership team that I can lean on, that can help, that can tell me what to do when we get into these pieces and these points, and that we can go execute together on. And without this amazing team that we brought in, there's no way that we could have gone through, the IPO and then been successful on the back end.
Great insight there for us. Thank you for that. We always like to ask for what we refer to as a finance strategic moment. And this might have been any time during the course of your career. It might not have been at Paycor. But we're looking for a moment of insight that you experienced, that you responded to. And I know you've had so many of these over the years, but we're just looking for one that you can share and reveal to us how you responded. Again, we call it a finance strategic moment. Anything come to mind?
Fortunately, in this role, I get a lot of those awesome strategy tie-ins. But one of the things that resonated with me early in my career was I was in this business case development process with a product leader, and we were putting together the product offering. How does it fit the strategy? How do the customers use it? And I was building, of course, the financial model that supported that. What's the cost stack? How could the revenue come through? What was the attach rate? All of that stuff. And when we got to the pitch, the product owner looked at me and said, hey, I'll let you talk about your financials. And it sort of frustrated me. And I said to him, hey, these aren't my financials. This is your business case. So we worked on this together, but you own the outcome of this. And I was a wee lad at this time. So I don't know how I got outside my shoes with this product owner. And my boss is sitting there, and she's sort of calmed everybody down as I was getting frustrated with this senior leader. But it dawned on me at that point that not everybody has the same level of ownership, and finance can be a vehicle for making decisions, strategic decisions, key decisions, and owning the outcome, just like the product manager should have in the first place. So that was a really pivotal moment for me, where I flipped. I don't know if it was a complete flip, but it started to flip to, wow, I can really impact the outcome of business and strategy and operations a lot more than even the people that are in those roles that I think they're supposed to be doing it. Well, they might think I'm supposed to be doing it. So I just said, fine, I'll do it then.
The business landscape is changing quickly. As the pressure to manage expenses efficiently and strategically increases, you need solutions that not only help drive down costs and improve efficiencies, but meet the changing needs of your business. At U.S. Bank, we can help. We'll work with you to uncover your specific payment challenges and bring you proactive and innovative solutions and strategies that help you meet the financial goals of your organization. Our commitment to doing the right thing for our customers has earned us the designation of one of the world's most ethical companies from the Ethisphere Institute for 6 years in a row. To learn more, visit us at usbpayment.com. and we're going to jump to our mentoring round where we ask you several quick questions intended to inspire and inform future finance leaders. This question might sound familiar because I asked it regarding the IPO. We now want you to think, though, about your first 30 days as a CFO, and that would have been at Paycor. You already described that late in 2019 as you stepped into that role. If you could go back in time then, and we know all laid ahead, the IPO, but also COVID and everything that was going to come your way. But it's that first 30 days, first 90 days, really, that you're in the role. What would you tell yourself? What is it that you're going to, what are you going to say to yourself?
Yeah, I would tell myself right away, you are not going to know the answer to every decision. And you don't need to know the answer to every decision, but you got to figure out how to find all those answers. And it starts, of course, with your team. So continue to build into your team, and even beyond your finance team, making sure that you prioritize your executive relationships, the relationships with other executives who are managing the business. You have to build those first, and then you build them and manage your team as well. But I think there's so much pressure with for the CFO to know how to do everything that it's a little foreign to us to say, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure what you're talking about. But you have to be willing to say that so that you can bring the right people in that can help you execute.
Now, had you done investor relations before? Interestingly, was that part of your earlier career as well? Or was that something you had to do on the job here as you took on the CFO role and start building those relationships with the analysts and educating them and all of that? Sounds like a tall order. I imagine you had someone on your team to help you through that. Yeah.
Yeah, I started. So when we took Vantiv public in 2012, I was a supporting analyst for investor relations. We did not have an investor relations leader right away, but as you can imagine, most of the leadership spent the time with the analysts and hearing the story and sharing that message. I got to work with them through the IPO, and then I was working with the investor relations lead once. Nate Rosoff, who's now running investor relations for FIS, I worked with him directly on sort of unpacking that story, understanding how to share the message around financials and talk to analysts and interpret, our results into that story. Spent a lot of time there.
Okay. We always like to see if our guests can reflect a little on the personal side for us. This is the toughest question you're going to be asked, or it seems to be for most finance leaders. We're wondering if you have a personal habit or part of a daily routine that you're known for, not that you run every day. Please no. But something else that someone, a family member might point out to us, and they'll say, yeah, that's just Adam. Adam does that. That's what he's known for. And it might be because a certain number of cups of coffee in the morning, and it might be an indulgence at lunchtime, a donut. I don't know, but does anything come to mind that you're?
I do drink a ridiculous amount of coffee. That is for sure. It's multiple pots a day that we're making. My wife is always telling me, like, you got to chill out. You got to slow down on this. You're going to hurt yourself.
Are you discriminating? Is it, do you have a certain type of coffee, or it doesn't matter really? Yeah.
I can drink the crappy coffee too, like the really bad coffee that you'll get at the, at not a gas station coffee, but like when you go into an auto dealership and it's been sitting over there for a while. I could totally indiscriminate. I prefer Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, but I will drink any coffee.
Yep, not picky. We wonder if you have a book recommendation for us.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple I've read over the last couple of years that really stuck with me. One is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and it's great. I think it's a great book for anybody, finance leaders, but anybody who's looking to make an impact.
Tell us about what is it? What is it about?
Yeah, so Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL and had was a leader in the Navy SEALs for quite a while and spent quite a bit of time in war. And then he went on afterwards. He speaks now. He's one of the more successful podcasts, and he's an inspirational speaker. And he lays out this sort of path about making decisions in a business context, but he does it with this sort of military background of how he's made decisions, where he's failed, which I think we all learn more from when we fail, reflecting on it, and how you can take more ownership in the decision. And then he relates it to a sort of business concept or something that we can relate to that, for folks who haven't been in an active battle. And so it's really great. I don't love a ton of business books, but I think this one, with just his experience and then how relatable he can make it, it's a great message. And then also to hear that you probably need to own more of the outcome is always a good message as well.
Adam, we're up to our final question where I get to ask you to look forward. And we're interested in your 12-month CFO priorities. So as you look forward the next 12 months, what are those priorities?
Yeah, it's probably not going to come to as a surprise as I would say that, executing on our strategy and driving metrics into the organization. You can always do more, and we're going to continue to execute on the things that we said that we were going to do. I think it's got to be the most important thing. As the CFO to say we're going to do what we told everybody we were going to do. We're also hyper-focused on corporate compliance across SOX compliance, and ESG is a big topic right now. So we're navigating that. And then we continue to invest in scaling the organization, right? Creating an amazing customer experience, but also creating the infrastructure so that we can continue to build for the next 10, 20 plus years. And I spend a lot of time working with our chief product officer, our chief strategy officer, our chief technology and information officer to make sure that we're focused on the right things so that we can drive revenue growth, but then also scale the business to support it over the longer term.
Adam Ante, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. It's great. It's fun.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you like the show, please recommend it to a friend.